Welcome. We're just going to have a quick look through the new screenshots that have just been released as part of the Mist of Pandaria press tour. So sit back and let's start having a look through them. There's some interesting screenshots that we've got going on here, and I'm going to point out the things that are kind of interesting for me as somebody who's going to be playing Mist of Pandaria a hell of a lot. Okay, first up we've got Alliance Group fighting Hosen in the Stormstout Brewery. Now the screenshot's one of the most interesting ones for me as somebody who's going to be doing a lot of dungeons and raiding, going into MOP, because it actually gives us an insight into some of the kind of gear styles that we're going to be getting on a number of different classes. So we've got what I think is a mage and a hunter, and I don't know what the other one is in the background, but that's quite interesting. It's kind of obviously we're going to be seeing a very Asian and ethnic theme throughout the whole of the expansion, but also into the armor styles as well, which is like really cool. It's really looking good. And that's followed up by a shot of the same group starting out at the entrance to the Stormstout Brewery with Chen Stormstout, who has been mentioned quite a lot in the lore previously, so it's good to actually see and be able to fight alongside him in the expansion. In terms of some of the other dungeons that we're going to be getting at release of Mist of Pandaria, we don't have a lot of information on what they're going to look like and the kind of bosses we're going to get there, but we have specifically seen Heroic Scarlet Monastery and Heroic Scholomance. There are videos to accompany those, but here's a couple of screenshots as well. One of the things that really interests me about the fact that these two dungeons are included at the release of Mist of Pandaria is the storyline that's going to surround them, and specifically how that's actually going to tie in to what else is going on in those two kind of areas. There's obviously some storylines and quests that are going to link into that, but how are they going to link into Mist of Pandaria? Are we going to see some other quests alongside setting the main continents of Azeroth that are going to tie into that? I don't know, and we've not really had a lot of information about that, so stay tuned. Before we get to look at the new continent as it is, let's have a look at the last kind of instance zone that we've got here, which is the Stranglethorn Vale Diamond Mine. It's a PvP zone, which is interesting. Obviously the theming here is kind of very similar to what we've got currently in like Firelands and whatnot, so there's nothing really exciting here, but interesting for PvP. There's lava, so that's going to be interesting to see how that's going to play out. Obvious hilarious potentials for classes that have pushbacks there. And on to the Pandaren Female, which is going to get a lot of people talking. I think the same kind of people that were probably very upset about the Worgen Females will probably be very upset about the Pandaren Females as well. And you know, that's fine, they're entitled to an opinion. I think they look a bit too much like furries, but ultimately when they're covered in armour and you know, shoulder pads and huge ridiculous helms, does it really matter what they look like? Probably not. I think one thing that is worth pointing out though is that there is quite a high poly count in there compared to the rest of the kind of vanilla race models, and obviously the animation is going to be up to scratch of the Pandaren Male as well, so I think it'll look pretty good when it's in action. The screenshots in kind of low level gear is never going to be a good indicator of what they're going to look like end game anyways. Now the Pandaren Male, for contrast, I think looks pretty cool. I know there's a lot of people who are very upset about the fact that they're even considering using pandas. In itself a ridiculous stance to take when we've got bears and cows and even bird people, and any kind of anthropomorphism that we've got in the game is there's a lot of it in World of Warcraft already, and I think it's very silly for people to be going, oh, I'm not going to play it because there's pandas. Now in terms of the styling that Blizzard have done on the pandas, I think they've done a really good job, and obviously the animation is top notch, and ultimately what they've done is they've kept the style and the essence of World of Warcraft and that whole kind of universe as well, which I think, you know, give them a round of applause for that. They've done a really good job. So if we move on and let's have a look at some of the scenery of Mist of Pandaria. Let's start out with the starting zone, which is the Shenzin Su Turtle, or the Wandering Isle, which is your 1 to 10 starting zone. which looks pretty awesome. I like the whole concept of this land that's on the back of a turtle. It's completely separated from the Mist of Pandaria mainland, and that's where the adventurous Pandaren go, and they kind of learn about life. And obviously in terms of World of Warcraft, they're going to learn about the Horde and the Alliance, and at the end of the start zone they get to pick which faction they want to side with. So let's have a look through some of the Mist of Pandaria screenshots of the day that have come out over the past week, because there's a couple of these that maybe a few of you have missed. So let's have a look through those. There's some pretty good shots, and I think for me, I'm fairly excited about the whole aesthetic. Now I know a lot of people have compared the styling to Kung Fu Panda, and that's something you really can't avoid, and I do feel sorry for Blizzard because they were working on the concept art and the styling for this expansion before Kung Fu Panda came out. There's years of work that's gone into this, and you know, you do have to feel a little bit sorry for them. But in terms of what the game looks like, let's not focus on a couple of films that have come out and have been and gone already. Let's focus on the game that we're going to be playing for the next 18 months or so, and it does look very beautiful. And they are, what I am excited about is they are pushing the engine. They're just ramping up the view distance or the amount of detail that the engine can do. This screenshot in particular I love because there's just a ridiculous amount of detail in it for WoW. And you've got to think about this engine that's dating back in development for nearly like 10 years or so, and it's just like, I love it. It's just, let's just throw more stuff at it and more stuff at it, and the poly count is pretty low, but generally it's looking really good, and it's got a really unique vibe about it, which is, we definitely need more of that in WoW. We need the game to be unique and have its own style again. We don't want too much repetition or the use of the same model over and over again. So the fact we've got all these new art assets is just brilliant. Now obviously we are going to have some zones that look familiar to other zones we've got. This shot in particular reminds me of the Arathi Highlands, but that's only because it's kind of grassy and a bit hilly with some trees. You know, there's only so much they can do, and I don't really think people should be beating them up too much about any kind of repetition of style, especially when that repetition of style could be of what I think is everybody's favourite zone, Nagrand. This particular screenshot I think looks fantastic. One of the things that used to bug me about Nagrand was the trees, and they looked really bad. In here they've got a very obviously Chinese vibe about the trees, and they just look fantastic. And yeah, again, really high amount of detail. Everybody's got faster PCs now. Let's just push it and just make the game look as beautiful and as artistic as we possibly can. So what we have here are a couple of shots of the Jade Forest, and in particular the Temple of the Jade Serpent, which again looks absolutely fantastic. And this temple apparently marks a special place in Pandaren history. This is where the last emperor of the Pandarans defeated the Shah of Doubt. It's going to be one of the dungeons, one of the first dungeons we get to go into, so this will be probably our introduction to the Shah. Okay, let's start to wrap it up, and let's have a look at some of the other kind of races we're going to get in Mist of Pandaria. And first off is a shot of this pretty badass looking, kind of like a Tauren. He's a Yaungol, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And the Yaungol were separated from the rest of Azeroth when Pandaria broke off from the main continents, and you can tell they're kind of like Tauren in essence, and they're very similar to the Tonka from Northrend. I actually thought they were the same, but they look pretty amazing, don't they? And then on the complete flip side of that, we've got the Verming, which not the best screenshot, I don't think. I think some of the concept art that they showed off at BlizzCon was pretty amazing for the Verming. They're kind of like little scavengers that build weapons, and in this case I think explosives out of things that they find lying about. And then last off this video we've got a couple of screenshots of the Hosen, who sound quite interesting. It sounds like the Hosen are going to be they're pretty mischievous, going around causing trouble the whole time, and kind of causing a lot of hassle for the Pandaren. And more interestingly, they're going to be siding with the Horde. So I think if you're playing Horde, if you choose a Horde faction for your Pandaren, you'll see a lot of the Hosen. and they'll be your best of buddies. If you play Alliance, it'll be the exact opposite. You'll be fighting the Hosen, and you'll be putting a stop to whatever nefarious plans they're coming up with, especially later on in the expansion. And let's finish with a couple of shots of the Shadowpan hideout. The Shadowpan sound also pretty interesting. I think they're going to be one of the main end game factions. Basically they're the guys that are fighting the Mantid. It's not massively clear, but I think the Mantid are going to turn out to be the main enemy of this expansion. There's a lot of stuff about the Mantid that we haven't really seen at this point, but the Shadowpan, they're the guys that have been fighting the Mantid, and they're kind of holding them out at the Gate of the Setting Sun, which is another one of the dungeons that's going to ship with the game. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's always interesting to see how the factions work out. There's a lot of stuff Blizzard can do with the factions to make them interesting and some compelling gameplay. So yeah, I think that's one of the main places we're probably going to be focusing our gameplay on once we've dinged to level 90. We're working with the Shadowpan and fighting the offensive against the Mantid. So that's it for today, and there's going to be lots more information coming out about Mist of Pandaria soon, and like a lot of other people, I'm hoping to get into the beta. I've signed up for the annual pass, so it should be in there, and I'm going to be covering as much of that as I possibly can. So please subscribe, and if you've liked this little video I've put together, obviously please like it as well. If not, feel free to down thumb it as well. See you next time.